For half a century, the mental model of global energy security was defined by the geopolitics of fossil fuel extraction and the routing of pipelines. Today, that legacy framework feels deceptively stable. It is currently masked by subdued crude oil prices and heavily oversupplied markets. But as the global economy transitions into the age of electricity, geopolitical risk has migrated from fuel flows to the complex hardware and minerals that power the grid. The International Energy Agency's newly released World Energy Outlook 2025 serves as an authoritative audit of this systemic shift. The report issues a stark warning. For the first time in history, energy security tensions apply to multiple fuels, physical technologies, and critical supply chains simultaneously. Safeguarding these modern systems requires the exact same focus that governments showed when the IEA was created after the 1973 oil shock. Treating energy security solely as an oil and gas supply problem leaves nations completely blind to the severe bottlenecks defining the next decade. The urgency of these bottlenecks is exposed by a deep physical paradox. In 2024, the world experienced a 23rd consecutive year of record-breaking renewable energy deployment. Yet, in parallel, global energy-related carbon emissions continue to rise. This chart shows the temperature outcomes projected by the IEA. Based on currently stated policies, we are diverging sharply from the 1.5-degree target and heading directly toward outcomes in the range of 2.5 to 3.0 degrees Celsius. IEA Executive Director Dr. Fatih Birol explicitly connects these risks, stating that safeguarding energy security today is functionally identical to safeguarding economic and national security. The gap between our targets and our trajectory isn't caused by a lack of political intent. It is the result of immense physical friction within the new electricity-based engines of the global economy. The 1.5-degree pathway is slipping out of reach because the world's climate ambitions are colliding with the volatile new security requirements of an electrified global economy. The geographic center of gravity for global energy demand has permanently shifted away from advanced economies in the West. Emerging market and developing economies, specifically India, Indonesia, and Brazil, are now the primary engines of structural demand growth as they rapidly industrialize. Running parallel to that is a massive new technological demand engine, the exponential power requirements of artificial intelligence and hyperscale data centers. The extreme computational density of modern AI servers requires utilities to rewrite their localized load forecasting models from scratch. These two demand engines create intense competing pressures. One seeks basic universal access and heavy industry. The other demands hyper-advanced, uninterrupted power density. Both demand vectors require massive, instantaneous upgrades to physical grid infrastructure. Grid resilience now functions as the absolute ceiling on both economic development in emerging markets and the global AI arms race. Against this gridlock, legacy power generation remains deeply entrenched. In 2024, global coal consumption hit an all-time record high. According to the IEA, since 2019, global coal demand has grown 50% faster than the next fastest-growing fossil fuel. This persistence is heavily driven by China's massive industrial baseline, creating powerful inertia against the clean energy transition. Meanwhile, the natural gas market is on the verge of its own structural transformation, triggered primarily by the United States. A massive wave of new liquefied natural gas, or LNG, export capacity is about to flood the global market. This impending glut creates a cheap geopolitical safety net for importing countries, while simultaneously removing the economic pressure to aggressively decarbonize. The sheer abundance of legacy fuels provides short-term geopolitical stability, but mathematically guarantees long-term climate failure if left unchecked. To escape that failure, the world must physically build clean technologies at scale. That makes critical minerals the new physical currency of the age of electricity. The physical mining of these minerals is reasonably dispersed around the globe. The true structural vulnerability lies midstream. This map illustrates the core bottleneck. A single country refines 19 out of 20 strategic energy minerals, a concentration far exceeding OPEC's historical peak. Relying on one node for processed materials elevates the risk of severe supply disruptions. The IEA warns explicitly that this extreme reliance raises the direct threat of economic coercion. Free market forces alone are entirely insufficient to solve this. Building diverse, redundant supply chains requires coordinated state-level intervention. An energy system built on highly efficient clean technology is useless if the foundational materials can be embargoed by a single geopolitical actor. Surprisingly, the transition does have one area of massive oversupply: hardware manufacturing. Global manufacturing capacity for solar PV and battery storage now far exceeds current deployment rates. The barrier to achieving net zero is no longer a lack of factory output or overly expensive clean energy technology. Those surplus panels and batteries are bottlenecked by the lack of modernized grid connections and prohibitive financing costs in developing nations. The path toward net zero now depends almost entirely on infrastructure deployment and capital allocation, rather than new laboratory breakthroughs. This chart shows three scenarios. The top line models current policies, the middle stated policies, and the bottom traces the path to net zero. Closing the massive gap between the middle and bottom lines requires solving the vulnerabilities discussed: grids, minerals, and finance. These precise infrastructural and geopolitical challenges are the necessary agenda for the upcoming COP30 climate summit. The definition of energy security must be permanently expanded beyond oil reserves. In 1973, stabilizing the world economy required an enormous level of international cooperation to secure the flow of physical fuel. Navigating the 2020s requires treating minerals, data centers, and grids with the exact same geopolitical urgency once reserved for a barrel of crude oil.